Bethesda's next game, Starfield, was teased in June 2018 at E3, and we still haven't really seen any proper gameplay or other teasers or heard too much about it until a few recent leaks, which I'll show later in the video. But with this kind of lack of knowledge on this new IP that they're making, it does allow for people like myself to kind of make videos where we can discuss what we'd like to see in games like this without really being restricted at all. We can just think, other than that it's going to be a sci-fi setting, what we'd like to see in an area like that. And that's the complete intent of today's video. Basically, what I'm going to be doing is basically just saying what I would like to see in Starfield. So we'll have another one of these features I'd like to see videos, but this time it's going to be for Starfield. But I think the best place to start a video like this would be discussing those alleged leaks that were released earlier this week, which took in the place of two screenshots. The first one being of an astronaut and a spaceship, which allows us to see a few interesting things, but from looking into the background, except near the top middle, that weird circle, this does look like a very early game build, so it's probably something from maybe a couple of years ago. It could have been something that they considered showing off at E3 2018, but realised that the game is so far away that they didn't want to show anything just yet. But with an image like this, what we can see is a human astronaut, so we don't really get any instant confirmation on alien races, which is something I'll go into later. But we do get to have a look at the HUD. We can clearly see health and stamina with 2 bars. We can see what looks like a shotgun as like a kind of HUD symbol next to some ammo, which has some zeros, which are probably going to be for ammo, let's be real. And on the left side we have an O2 and CO2 kind of circly HUD kind of thing, which is very interesting, but it's probably to do with just how much oxygen your character has left before, you know, they need to get some more or they'll start suffocating. The actual clothing that he's wearing, you can see there's that patch on his shoulder with some sort of symbol of a planet with some stars above, which could be some sort of interesting faction, or it could just be that he's an astronaut and that's what they wear in this kind of new IP. And the other screenshot that we have to look at is of a very cool looking spaceship in quite a lot of detail. We've got some massive kind of turbo engines near the back. We have what you can clearly see as a way of getting in and out of the ship, kind of sticking out in orange. And towards the front we can see a lot of other kind of big parts to it. And obviously I don't know for sure if these are actually Starfield leaks which are confirmed, but it is still very interesting to see stuff like this coming out quite early. But anyway, onto the more kind of just discussion side of the video. The first thing that I'd like to see in Starfield would be alien races. Now, of course, I would love these to be playable races as well, as that would just add so much more to character customization and could even add to later game options. So if they do what they have done with Cyberpunk and have it so your backstory kind of can influence some voice lines later in the game, it'd be quite nice if some alien races would have certain kind of languages. But as from what I have heard of Starfield from earlier talks, like the one which Elon Musk and Todd Howard did together, it does sound like they are trying to ground it down into a realistic scenario, which might mean they do ignore alien races. Or it could just be something which isn't in their vision of what this game is going to be, as obviously we still don't actually know that much about it. But personally, I would love the ability to run around as some sort of like Argonian bounty hunter. And yes, I know I'm going to get scaly comments for this, but still, I think it would be very cool to be like almost like Trandoshans are in Star Wars. And, you know, just there's so many different kinds of creatures they can make from other planets. Whether they do actually interact in a friendly manner to the player or not, there's still stuff that, you know, could be decided. And once again, relating back to those alleged leaked photos, it does clearly show a human astronaut in the suit. Whether that's just because it will be the default race or because it's the only playable race, well, we'll find out in the months to come. The next thing I'd like to see would be interesting factions. Now this can be defined in several different manners depending on how the game actually kind of ends up being. If it's going to be something which is very much grounded in reality, set maybe 200 years from now, I'd like to see these different kind of space factions of kind of what, I don't know, America's doing in space and what Europe's doing in space and what China's doing in space, and having these different sides all kind of maybe slightly conflicting or at least having different views of what to do with space travel. But obviously, you know, when you get to these kind of wackier ideas, if they do really lean into the epic sci-fi side of things, you could have alien races which are maybe trying to be more like merchants guilds or bounty hunters. Basically what I'm trying to say in the long term is I really want something which will allow me to be a bounty hunter in space, because that's the kind of thing which I really like in just all the lore of, say, Star Wars, for instance. Like The Mandalorian was an excellent show, and then like the whole kind of bounty hunter idea behind, well, all bounty hunters I just find pretty cool. The third thing that I'd hopefully look for would be diverse planets or cultures. Again, this depends on how much they lean into that whole alien side of things. If they don't bother with it at all, just having these kind of really diverse looking locations which make you go, wow, that's awesome, would be amazing. But also, if we do have alien races, have them have different cultures. They would have been raised and grown up in a completely different way, having their own religions, having their own kind of, and a completely different view on society. Just imagine, for instance, the Outer Worlds had amazing different planets, and it was really cool visiting each and every single one of them, but that game didn't really have any aliens in. So if you had these alien cultures as well, it would just add another layer to this kind of wacky and craziness. And hopefully, if they do add multiple planets, because I don't know how they're going to do this, but if there are multiple planets, the Outer Worlds is probably one of the best games at the moment that they could kind of take inspiration from, just because, honestly, I've played through that recently, and it was an excellent game, really one of my favourite ones that I've played recently. And there were, what, 7 planets in the Outer Worlds or something like that? 7 different, big different locations, each with their own assets, each with their own complete unique designs and their own problems, some of which suffering from the board, which is all collected, and others which were kind of standing on their own or didn't really have that much kind of society to them and were mainly kind of barren and just left empty. But yeah, multiple areas like that would be really cool and just add another layer of awesomeness and replayability to the game. The fourth thing for my list would be having buildable or even just modifiable spaceships and kind of droid companions. Now, the reason why I say droid companions as well as spaceships is because I feel like it would just be really cool to either have kind of either droid servants on your spaceships or in your house or whatever your kind of residential situation is in space, or just have them as like kind of battle companions or followers that you can kind of manually tinker with and kind of modify to something which is, you know, really good for you and suits your chosen playstyle, as well as the spaceships, just because, you know, I'm a bit of a sucker for customization. I like to make things look like they belong to me, so when my friends see my stuff and when I look at my friends' items, I can clearly tell sort of who they belong to, and it kind of slightly reflects their personality, which is really nice. Plus, with stuff like this, that means you could get like stealth shields or kind of stronger shields to block off shots, or bigger weapons to shoot back at people. And in a way, I do also hope that they have actual space combat, because there is a chance that with the spaceships, what they might do is just have all this kind of realistic, making sense lore with how they work, but it could be like with the Outer Worlds, where you don't actually fly your ship around, you just use the map and then appear somewhere else. As I'm personally not the biggest fan of No Man's Sky, but one thing I do really like that it does is give you that seamless transition from getting in your ship, flying off a planet, and then just going out into space. What I would love is, oh, I've just been to this massive city on a planet, and I now need to go visit like a space station bazaar or something near the sun. So I hop in my ship, fly off out throughout the sky, and then burst through the clouds into, you know, space without having any loading screens, and then land on the outside of this, you know, space bazaar, and then it takes me into the loading screen so it can actually realistically load the area. But having that kind of ability where I am in control of leaving and going onto the planet, or at least seeing it, would be really awesome and something that I'd really personally enjoy in a game like this. And finally, the last thing I'd love to see would be different playstyles and just abilities to kind of use that and play the game differently, allowing for replayability because of these. So for instance, what I mean by this is I'm a massive sucker for charisma builds, just because I find it absolutely hilarious just being able to talk your way through any situation if you make the correct dialogue choices. So having those ways where, like for instance in the Outer Worlds, where you can just talk your way through places instead of having to get into combat is really nice. Or you might want to have a melee build, or a long range build, or a stealth one. Just ways or maps at least, for the possible spaceships or dungeons and stuff, which just allow you to kind of take a situation and complete it the way that you would want your character to. So let's say a group of spaceship bandits come upon you and try and take all your loot. Either you could, persuade them to come over to your ship, have a nice conversation with them, play a few games of cards, then gracefully tell them to F off. Or instead, you perhaps poison their drinks at the dinner table, or just blow their ships up. Having those options to kind of deal with different situations in several different ways is excellent, and makes it for when you're going back to the game, you can realise, I haven't played the game like this. Even though I'll be doing the same missions again, it'll be interesting to see how this playstyle works with it. And that's all I really have to say about Starfield. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I'm wondering what you guys are looking forward to the most in Starfield, or in fact any of the Bethesda games coming out, especially with now Microsoft and Bethesda being in, well, now partnershipped properly. I'm kind of curious to see what you guys think about it. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.